Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Today is Tuesday, July the 14th. We do have CPI this morning in about 20 minutes, which is going to be fairly important. So we'll kind of go over some charts, take a look at what we're looking for coming into market open, and then we'll wait for CPI to drop at 8:30. We have a bunch of other red folder news events as well. We have earnings kicking off this morning with the big banks. So yeah, decent amount of things to kind of talk about coming to market open. What's up, everyone? Good morning. Let me make sure I have this pulled up. Good morning, Kelvin, J10. What's up, B Roots? Good morning, Maria, Knight, Gerald, Z Norris. Good morning, Bobby. Good morning, Lamit. What's up, everyone? Enjoyment, Cody, Robert, Senna, Deuce, Bizen, Maria, Ron, Andrea, Julius, Gustav, Carlos, TSD. Yeah, what's up, everyone? Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. With that being said, let's pull up the economic calendar. Let me make sure I have this here as well, and then we'll get started. Okay. So coming into market open, hopefully you guys can see my screen. Sorry. What we have coming into today, we do have core CPI. This is going to be fairly important. As I mentioned, this is at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is in about 20 minutes. So core CPI, we have the month over month. We also have the year over year. And then we have Fed chair testifying. That's going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we'll go over some charts for the next kind of 20 minutes, and then we'll wait for CPI, and then we'll develop our game plan from there. As for tomorrow, we have core CPI month over month, along with the PPI month over month as well. And then Fed Chair Warsh is testifying once again. That's going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. And then on Thursday, core retail sales. We have the retail sales month over month, along with the unemployment. And then on Friday, we have the prelim consumer sentiment, along with the inflation expectations here as well. As for the earnings calendar, we talked about some of the big banks have reported this morning, kicking off with financials. We have AHR in the after hours, other things to keep an eye out for, ASML on Wednesday. And then really the main ones is going to be on Thursday. We have UNH, which is going to be big. We have TSM. And then, of course, we have Netflix, which is one of the first big tech names that we have here as well. So this is what we have coming into this week, at least for the red folder news events, along with some of the tech names that we have as well. As I mentioned, we'll just wait for the next kind of 20 minutes and then develop our game plan. Sorry, we'll wait for the next 20 minutes until CPI drops, and then we'll develop our game plan from there. So with that being said, let's talk about ES and the rest of the major tech names that we do have. Let me grab some water here before we get started. But as you can see, the overall markets yesterday, we ended up rejecting really off key levels. We got back underneath that 752 here on the SPY. As for the QQQ, we just held underneath that previous day lows. And you can see we had a little bit more downside here in the markets as well. The main, of course, indice that dropped towards the downside was the SMH. Currently, we are gapping up. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But for the semis, we have been showing and still been showing a little bit more weakness within the past 2 weeks. Okay, so with that being said, let's take a look at the SPY here on the daily time frame. So currently here for the SPY, let's turn on the EMAs as well. So right now on the daily chart, you can see we're still somewhat consolidating a little bit more inside of a bigger range. The structure is still bullish here based off the daily chart, more so on the SPY. But currently we're having a little bit of reaction kind of at the 755. We like to see it above our 755 for any sort of continued pushback up and towards our all-time highs. If you go into the hourly chart, the key levels that we have marked out, let's turn back on the drawings. What we have marked out here in this case is our 752, which is a very key level. We have the middle of the range, and then we also have the bottom of the range, which is that 740. So yesterday, you can see we tried holding above our 752 earlier into the day. And then ultimately, once we got back underneath, you can see the markets started to flip, and then we started showing a little bit more weakness intraday. And right now, currently, we are in the middle of the range. If you go on to the 15-minute time frame, you can see earlier into the day yesterday, we tried holding above that 752. We had some news later into the session with Trump, and you can see we kind of just stayed heavy. Lower highs were being built. Once we got back underneath that 752, that was a sign that the market was going to be a little bit weaker. And now you can see we're back down into that 747. Currently in the pre-market, we're dropping just a little bit here as well, down in towards that after hours lows, which is our 747. So coming to market open here for the SPY, I'm a little bit more neutral now on the SPY. Key levels I'm just going to have marked out is the low that we created here from Thursday of last week. If we do want to see any sort of upside in the markets, we want to see a bounce play here off that previous day lows for a potential move back up in towards that 752. If we do see some downside, or if we want to see some downside underneath that 746, hold underneath that 746, we can see a move back down into that 740 here on the higher time frames. So that's what I have for the SPY. If you go onto the ES, the key levels that we have marked out here as well. In this case, what we just have marked out is that 7,600. Other key levels that we have marked out is our 7,540 along with our 7,480. Currently, as you can see, yesterday we did reject off this area. Once we got back underneath, we just gravitated down into the middle of the range. Now coming to market open here for the ES, if we do want to see some upside, as I mentioned, I would just like to see the bounce off our previous day lows in equilibrium for a potential move back towards the upside. If we do want to see some more downside underneath our 7,540, we can see a push down into the bottom of the range, which is that 7,500. So these are the levels that I have marked out on the ES coming into market open. Keep an eye out on that 7,540 coming into market open here today. All right, let's take a look at the QQQ along with the NQ here now as well. What's up, everyone? Good morning. So there's no update in circle for the key. If you go into the key level section on the on circle, you'll be able to see the axis, and then once you click the charts, you'll be able to get the levels, DDD. If you go into the circle and go into the key level section. What's up, everyone? Good morning. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. Let's take a look at the Qs. We have about 15 more minutes, so we'll see how much we can go down the list. But we'll head on to a couple more major indices, and then we'll probably I think we can get all the tech names done before CPI news release at 10 a.m. Sorry, at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So as you can see here for the Qs, so far we're still in a little bit of a tighter range. We're kind of bouncing now off the lows, or we're gravitating down in towards the lows here. So for the Qs, we also had this gap fill that we ended up filling back towards the downside here as well. So if we go into the hourly time frame, the key levels that we have marked out is our 726, which is our last week's highs, Friday's highs. You can see yesterday we ended up gapping down underneath our previous day lows, our Friday's lows in this case, and then we ended up gravitating all the way back down in towards that full gap fill, which is over the weekend. That 712 gap fill that we ended up filling back. Let's just get rid of this real quick. As you can see right here, we ended up having this gap fill towards the downside that we created last week, and we ended up just filling this yesterday. So for the QQQ, we're fairly neutral, right? Right in between the range that we have drawn out. In this case, what we have marked out here is our 705 to that 725. And currently we're right in between the middle of the range, which is that 717.50. So coming into today, if you want to see some downside, you can see there's a lot of divergence as of late. SPY, Qs are kind of all across the board. Similar thing with the SMH. a lot of divergence, right? SPY held up and then ended up dropping, and now we're closer to the previous day lows. You can see the Qs, we ended up dropping, holding underneath our previous day lows, and now you can see we're gapping up. And then, of course, for the SMH, similar thesis, right? We ended up gapping down, holding underneath that previous day lows, and today we're actually above our previous day highs. So, a lot of divergence across the board. Whenever this is the case, it makes it a little bit more difficult trading conditions just because there's nothing that's really clear on the charts. As for the Qs coming to market open here today, what we're going to have marked out is that previous day highs. We can just draw this general area. There's been multiple touches around this 718. If we do want to see some upside above our 718, we can see continuation up and towards that 724. If we reject off our previous day highs, we can see room back down in towards that previous day close, along with our previous day lows, which is down in towards this 710 here on the higher time frame. So for the Qs, keep an eye on this reaction that we have off our 718 coming into market open. For the NQ, the levels that we have marked out in this case, and the range that we have marked out is this right here, our 30,000 to that 29,200. This is the level. You can see we have multiple touches, and then we also have equilibrium marked out, which is our 29, basically this 29,700. So coming into today, similar levels here for the NQ. If we reject here off our previous day highs, we can see room down in towards that pre-market lows and that overnight low and below. If you want to see any sort of continuation higher, right, the flip back above this 29,700, we can see room back up and towards our 30,000 here on the higher time frame. So this is what I have for the NQ and QQQ coming to market open. If I go on to the SMH here now, so far the semis are bouncing nicely in the pre-market. The semis have been a lot weaker as of late as well. Overall, on the weekly time frame, we are still intact, right at a key technical level, which happens to be this 9 EMA, also this down close candle here. So this is really the line in the sand for the SMH. If we can hold above this 575, we can see continuation towards the upside. If we break underneath this level, then that would be a sign that we can see a reversal here in the overall markets. If we're on the daily time frame, we're trying to reclaim back above this 9 and 21 here. We're so far trying to hold this area, which is our 580, and we're trying to build this kind of double bottom that we have on the chart. So we want to see a flip back towards the upside. All right, so we filled the gap here on SMH yesterday, back down in towards the gap that we had. Now you can see we're gapping back up here, back up above our previous day highs. So key levels that we have marked out, we can just mark this out right here, 595 previous day highs. We have our previous day highs, which also coincides with our Friday's lows. Now we just like to see it maintain above our previous day highs for continuation, back up and towards this gap fill that we have, which is our 610. If we get back underneath our previous day lows, then we can see a flip. There's actually two gaps on the chart. So right here, we have a gap up that we're going to create today. And then, of course, we had that gap down from yesterday. So there's two gaps on the charts. We're right at a key technical level. So we're going to see the reaction coming to market open. We can be looking for some downside to fill the gap lower, or we can look to fill the gap back towards the upside if the semis want to bounce coming to market open. So keep an eye out on our 600 key psychological level coming to market open here. Now let's take a look at the IWM. All right, let's take a look at the IWM here now. If you guys do have any charts or any tickers as well, you guys can drop them in the chat. If you guys are enjoying this so far, I appreciate if you guys drop a like and sub. If you guys haven't joined the free daily watch list, that of course is in the description below here as well. So for the IWM, the key levels that we have marked out is this 9 EMA on the weekly time frame. So far on the daily time frame here as well, we're just right around this 21 EMA on the daily chart. We could see something once again like an undercut reclaim push back up in towards that all-time highs. But overall for the IWM, the key levels that we have marked out, let's just turn this back on. Key levels that we have marked out for the IWM is really this 290 that we have marked out. What we like to see is buyers step in off this level. Other levels that we have marked out as well is back up in towards that 302 along with that 296. So for IWM bounce play here off that 292 are now above our 296 for continuation back towards upside. Okay, with that being said, let's take a look at some of the tech names that we have coming into market open here. Now we have roughly 7 minutes until core CPI that's going to be released. So we'll kind of speed run through some of the tickers that we do have, starting off with Tesla. Let me grab some water here really quickly as well. Do you have any videos that show top-down analysis? Yeah, I have a bunch of videos on my YouTube channel, and then you can also check out the key levels video or how to draw key levels that is in the description below. If you join the free watch list, it'll also take you to a Telegram community that have where I have the video pinned in the top of the Telegram. So for Tesla, let's go into the daily chart very briefly. This one, really not too much to talk about, a lot more range. As you can see, if we go into that hourly time frame, currently we are just bouncing off key technical levels. Let's get rid of the EMA since it's kind of cluttering our chart here. So for Tesla, yesterday, we actually got underneath our previous day lows. Once we got underneath our previous day lows, we ended up holding nicely underneath that level, and we pushed all the way back down in towards our 392, which as you can see, which as you can see, we have multiple touches, and so far we are bouncing off this key level support. So for Tesla coming into market open here, we're just going to mark out that previous day lows 390 here, and our previous day highs, which is all the way back up and towards that 402. If we do want to see continuation coming to market open, we can be looking for that bounce play here off our previous day lows 392 for a move back towards the upside. Really, this is kind of the only scenario that I have for upside. And then for downside, if you want to see some, you like to see a potential kind of pop and fade here off for 400. Or now underneath our previous day lows, we can see continuation towards the downside here as well, underneath that 392. Let's take a look at AMD. AMD's still holding up very nicely on the daily. As you can see here, higher lows are still very much well being built. We came down, not quite filled that full daily gap yesterday on AMD, but right now you can see we are building up a higher low here, consolidating, building up higher lows. This one's holding up as the markets really have been dropping above our 560. AMD can see a room up and towards that 580 here on the higher time frame. So let's zoom out here. For AMD, as I mentioned yesterday, we ended up gravitating down in towards that gap right off the bat, but ultimately we weren't able to fill that full gap towards the downside. Buyers stepped in kind of off this 528, and now you can see we're currently gapping up here in the pre-market. So for AMD, our key levels that we talked about is going to be that 560. We can also mark out that previous day highs here as well. So coming to market open, preferably maintain above that previous day highs. Best case scenario, if buyers step in right off the bat, we can look for AMD continuation towards the upside. So AMD is going to be one of my main top watches coming into this week, just based off the daily chart. We'll keep an eye on AMD above 560. We'll also keep an eye on this 552 here as well, which is our previous day highs. If we reject off this area, of course, there would be no trade, and we'd just be a little bit more patient, waiting for that break back above that 560. So that 560 is going to be key, as I mentioned. Let's take a look at NVIDIA here. NVIDIA, a little bit of rejection off that 212 yesterday. Key levels that we have marked out now is going to be that 205. So yesterday, we kind of came up in towards that previous day highs general area. A little bit of rejection all the way back down in towards that 205. So far, buyers are stepping in off this area. Now, what I like to see is just maintain above that 205 for continuation back up in towards the middle of its previous day's range, 208, and all the way back up in towards our 210 here on NVIDIA. So this one still building up higher lows, more so now on the hourly time frame. I would like to see now just higher lows be built, push back up and towards that 210 here on the higher time frames. As for Apple, quickly speed run through this. This one had a nice move towards the upside. We talked about this flat top break yesterday. We ended up having some nice continuation right off the bat. Ultimately, now we ended up closing a little bit weak, but if you're looking at this on the daily chart, we end up having that nice break, little bit of an upper wick here. So for the daily time frame, this is what it looks like, or let me mark this out a little bit bigger, but upper wick here with a basically a neutral body, but pretty big upper wick right at that all-time highs here after having a flat top break. Apple's still valid. We just need to see a candle close back above that 316. So for Apple, if you do want to see some upside still, it'd have to be the reclaim back above that 316 for continuation higher. What you don't want to see now is the flip and a push down in towards that 310. As for Google, this one is more so ranging, or it hasn't really done too much in the past week. Microsoft, we had a nice push yesterday, but seems like we're dropping here in the pre-market here on Microsoft. Really, the daily chart is the one that matters. We're having a little bit of sellers that kind of keep stepping in off this 400 general area. It hasn't even hit 400 yet, but some more sellers are stepping in. The structure is bearish, of course, on Microsoft as well. Now you can see we're continuing lower. It seems like we had some news in the pre-market. As for Meta, this one yesterday, we talked about that potential previous day low bounce. Offered a nice previous day low bounce, came up into that previous day highs and rejected. Now you can see we're underneath our previous day lows. We're underneath that 660 here. So we have a pretty big gap. If you go into the regular trading hours on Meta, you can see we have a pretty big gap. This is what we created on Thursday of last week when we gapped up on Friday. So we have a pretty big gap down that we can look for a potential fill here on Meta. If we hold underneath that 660, we can see a push down in towards that 630 here on the higher time frames. If you go into the extended trading hours here, for Meta upside, we need to see that reclaim back above that 660 at a minimum. And then for Amazon, this one slowly building up higher lows here. Key levels that we have is our 250. Let's see if we can get that Amazon break above that 250 for continuation higher. This one has more so just been ranging. So the break above 250, we can see some continuation higher. And then for Netflix, this one is a little bit weaker. We do have earnings this week as well. Key level that we have marked out is our 75. Let's keep an eye out on Netflix off this area. And then SpaceX continues to drop, showing a little bit more weakness. Yesterday, we kind of rejected off that previous day lows. Next levels that we have marked out is going to be that previous day lows here as well. 137. Let's keep an eye on the reaction underneath our previous day lows, continuation towards the downside. 135 is a good target, which is basically that pre-IPO price. Okay, with that being said, we now have core CPI here as well. We'll see how the market reacts with, of course, the core CPI numbers being released. So far, you can see we're having an initial bullish reaction here on the SPY and QQQ. So yeah, initial reaction so far here with the SPY and Qs from that CPI news release. So far, we do have a gap all the way back up and towards our last week's close. So far, up about 1.4%. Semis are definitely leading the way higher here. You can see semis are pretty strong, up 4% so far. AMD, this one looks really good. So AMD will probably keep an eye out on today for potential continuation breakout of this 560 for a push towards the upside. I'll take a look at the numbers here in a second, but so far we're having an initial bullish reaction here on the SPY and the Qs in the overall markets. Let's do a little quick refresh. Okay, the core CPI numbers just were released here. The month over month, as you can see, came in very nicely actually. Forecasted 0.2, actual 0%. As for the year over year, 2.8 was forecasted. Came in lower than expectations, 2.6%. The month over month CPI, negative 0.1%. negative 0.4% actual forecasted, and then the year over year 3.8% compared to 3.5. So as you can see, very bullish reaction so far based off those numbers that we have. Um, from CPI. So the SPYs gapping up, ES, a pretty big reaction right off the lows. Qs, pretty big reaction. So overall market is having an initial bullish reaction here. So right now you can see SPY, we're trying to get back above the 752. So based off the daily chart, we kind of talked about this week being important, that CPI as well. Plus we have a couple other red folder news events. But the structure is still intact. If we can get above that 752, the next level that I would like to see more so on the SPYs at all-time highs. But we do need to get back above a couple key levels. Number one, if we can get back above the 752, which we're currently trying to do in the pre-market, right now we're just kind of right at our previous day highs. It very much well could reject and come all the way back down. But for upside today, I like to see it maintain above that 752. Also, I'd like to get above our previous day highs here as well. For the Qs, I would like to see it hold above our previous day highs for a push up in towards our 725 and above, which is that full gap fill that we have marked out. And then the semis are definitely the ones that are strong today, gapping up here, up 4%, maintain above that previous day highs, push up in towards our 616 here on the higher time frames. So let's take a look at some of the tech names that kind of moved in the pre-market just with that initial reaction. Most of them moved. But at AMD main watch today above our 560, we can have room up in towards our 752, and there's 580, sorry, 572 and 580. This could be my main watch moving forward. Nvidia, this one nice pop as well, back above our 205. Let's see if we can get that push back up and towards that 210 here. Apple reclaim. A lot of names are bouncing just kind of off the lows. Microsoft a little bit weaker. So the main ones are going to be AMD, Nvidia, Amazon potentially above that 250s in play for a move back towards the upside. Now let's take a look at a couple of these other tickers that we have marked out. AVGO, this one kind of been just ranging more so. AVGO, I'd like to see it above our 400. That's going to be our key level, 410. That's our range break. As for Palantir, this one's actually dropping in the pre-market, so Palantir's a little bit weaker for today. Let's take a look at some of the semis and memories here. So as you can see for MU, this one is pulling back into, let's take a look at this one on the daily chart so far. So daily chart, we're underneath the 9 and 21, but we're coming back into a key level support, which happens to be that 900. I like MU for a hold of this level for a push back up and towards our highs. MU so far, key levels that we have marked out is going to be our previous day highs. We can just mark out this general area. For MU, I'd like to see a hold of this 960. Currently, we're having a pretty big push in the pre-market. Next levels that we have marked out is going to be our high that we created here on Friday. Another possible scenario above our 1000, we can see a push up in towards our 1020. SNDK, key levels that we have marked out, previous day highs. Keep an eye on that previous day highs hold for a push up in towards this daily gap, up in towards that 1900. As for INTC, this one now reclaiming back above our previous day highs. Let's see if we can see this flip for a push back up and towards the upside here on INTC. So a lot of the semis moving in nicely here in the pre-market so far. MRVL, another one bouncing nicely here off the lows above our previous day highs continuation. TSM, similar thing. This one has earnings coming to this week as well. So coming into today, what's the game plan coming to market open after the CPI news release? At least for today now, we're going to keep an eye out on the same level that we have marked out, 718 here on the QQQ. As for the SPY now, we're going to keep an eye out on is more so the reaction that we have off this previous day highs. And then for the SMH, we're going to mark out the 600 key cycle level here as well. What are the main watches for today? AMD breakout on the daily chart is incoming if we can get above this 560. One of my favorite names so far setting up on the daily time frame. So keep an eye out on AMD today. Might not break out today, but there's a good chance with the overall markets pushing up higher. It could potentially reject, but once it breaks above, this is not a setup I don't think you want to miss here. All right, higher lows are being built. One of the strongest stickers holding up. if the Q just bounces or shows any sort of strength, AMD is going to be one of the leaders back up and towards our all-time highs and above. So AMD, make sure you keep an eye out on this one today above our 560. If we can break above, hold above that 560, fantastic. If it kind of rejects, holds that previous day highs, but then reclaims, then we can be looking for the trade back towards the upside as well. So AMD main watch coming to market open. We'll keep an eye on NVIDIA above our 205. And then the rest of the names I'm interested in, some of the semis and memories are bouncing. So MU, SNDK, INTC, all showing some strength here in the pre-market. So we'll keep an eye on these ones above our pre-market highs and above our previous day highs here as well. So yeah, that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you guys did enjoy that. If you did, appreciate if you guys drop a like and sub. If you guys haven't joined the free daily watch list, that of course is in the description below. And with that being said, I'll see you guys all tomorrow. All right, take care everyone. Peace.